Good evening. Welcome to the August 10th Comprehensive Plan Update Committee. We are, I think, ready to go here with everybody. We have special guests tonight, which we don't normally have. I'd like to introduce Amy and Nick Valenti from Bach to Rock, and Amy has the distinction of being the chair of the PBC, the Penfield Business Committee this year, and we've worked closely with her for a couple of years now, so it's really nice to have you here tonight. We also have with us Mr. Rudy Neufeld, who has been a local developer in Penfield for many, many years. I think I met you probably 30 years ago now, if I'm not mistaken, if not more. So we're going to talk a little bit about business tonight, and we've got them to come in and give us some guidance. The committee has been talking about the trends of business in Penfield over the last several years and where we expect to go over the next several. We are in the process of preparing a component of our comprehensive plan update addressing business and economic opportunities in Penfield. And I guess I'd like to start maybe with Amy and Nick. If you want to just talk a little bit about yourselves, and then we can talk a little bit about where you think Penfield is and what Penfield needs in the future, from your opinion.
Sure.
Great.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having us here tonight. We really appreciate it. We love working with the town closely, and I think we've built some great relationships between the chamber and the town. And certainly with Nick and I owning Bach to Rock Music School, we chose Penfield specifically. We were actually looking at Victor because we live in Victor, but Penfield was a better choice for us. So we love Penfield. We love having our business here in Penfield. So my background is I actually worked in corporate America for many years, places like Citibank, primarily in IT project management roles, and I'm currently a business professor at Cayuga Community College. I do assist with the business, but that is my full-time job, and then I was elected president of the Penfield Business Chamber in November, and that's been my pleasure to work on and continue to see that grow.
Yes, and thanks for inviting us. Again, my name is Nick Valenti. My background is I was in executive management for 30 years for 3 multi-billion-dollar companies, traveling around the world, doing acquisitions and divestitures, running big engineering departments. I was fortunate to retire young, and I've always been a musician, so we wanted to do something local and something for the community. So we opened Bach to Rock, which is a music school that teaches all instruments, all ages, all styles of music. We're right here in Penfield. We have hundreds of students. The community has totally embraced us, and we really enjoy being here.
Great, thank you. We have, if anybody, you would probably have the best hand on the pulse of what's happening in terms of economic development and also the business world in general. We're nervous now about what's happening, for mom and pop operations more than anything else. Penfield's made up of more mom and pop operations by far than it is big box development, and certainly we've wanted it that way over the years, but we're getting very concerned now because it's easier to get a big brown box on your front porch than it is to go out and buy something in one of the local businesses. We're worried about how that trend is moving forward and how this is going to affect the mom and pop operations in town. Right now we're seeing a lot of development in terms of service operations, doctors, dentists, lots of medical, hair salons, which is great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that there's not a lot of diversity in terms of the types of businesses that are coming to town. It seems to be a hub now for those types of businesses, and thank God they're all doing well. But you would like to see more mom and pop type operations, pop up and give them more of a village atmosphere than just medical coming in every day.
Yes, I hear you. And I mean, certainly COVID put a strain on, everyone. Thankfully for our business, we were able to quickly pivot and do virtual lessons. And so we were, able to maintain our customer base primarily. And then as soon as we were able to reopen, our customers slowly came back, so we're getting back to normal. But I hear you as far as like the mom and pop operations that are slightly different than what we do, as to how that could be very difficult for them right now to consider, continuing or to even open something up new. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
Well, I had a comment on service. Urgent care is opening everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And although service is important, you need something to pay for it. And, outside of my current role, if you look at my background in an industrial, This is not just a town or a county or a state or a nation issue. We have to make things. You have to make things in order to pay for things. So if there's a way to attract companies that do manufacturing, even small industrial, even servicing things is what you need for long-term sustainability to pay for service.
Agreed. I think we've been fairly lucky. We were in a real rut in terms of getting any kind of industrial type of activity for many, many years. And then recently, Dutch Summers and trying to think of Richie Lefroy have come in and developed the property down behind Popeyes in that area now. And they've got 2 buildings up, and I think there's like 7 more that are able to be developed on the site. And I know the town board right now is looking to rezone a portion of that property from industrial to commercial, general business retail, trying to keep it in line with what's happening along the street there, which I think is a great idea. But yeah, we've been very lucky that they came along, but we really haven't had much of that kind of activity going on over the last several years here. So we are getting nervous about it. Again, Penfield is a bedroom community. There are over 13,000 parcels in Penfield, and of that, I think 380 or 384 are zoned for commercial or industrial use. So there's not a lot of activity going on in our town in terms of that kind of development, but by the same token, we don't have a lot of vacant big boxes laying around town either, so that's kind of an advantage. And we have been very good with, particularly the PBC does a great job in terms of, pushing business in the town, and certainly we are encouraged by the people who own businesses, and even our plaza owners, our mall owners are very good about trying to keep people at their locations. So we've been happy about that, but there's always room for improvement. We've had like a 93 to 95% occupancy rate over the years. It's starting to drop a little bit right now, especially with COVID coming in. But we've had a really good run there for the last 20, 25 years. Hopefully that'll come back as soon as COVID kind of gets under control again. So I don't know if it'll ever go away, but at least we can get it under control.
So I did pass out a sheet to you. I don't know if you want to walk through some of those ideas.
Sure.
Okay, and then Nick had, after I put this together and printed it, of course, we talked about it, and he had some more things, so he'll just discuss those verbally. But the first item is, I know when we were opening up our Baccarat, this was December of 2017, I believe. As we had never had a business before, and it was a lot of, just a learning experience to try to understand what are the different steps involved in, building a building. We, basically took the old eyesight place and gutted it, and we didn't really have a good understanding of what we needed to do and what was involved and all that. So I was thinking of this from my perspective back then, is it would be really helpful to have, and you may have some of these things, I'm just not aware of it, a visual process flow of what are the steps involved. And I mean, we could piece together something. I'm not just talking about, creating a business plan. I'm talking about from the town perspective, like what do you need from the business owners, and then how do you interact? What are the different points that we need to, either come to a meeting, like a planning board meeting, or have some sort of inspection done, and so that was a little bit more clear to people, and like maybe even like estimated waiting times that it might take to get through a certain phase, like a building permit, I don't even remember all the different things we had to do. But so that was one idea, and then understanding the codes, like what kind of codes we need to be worried about for our particular type of business. And then it would be awesome at some point, I mean, I know this is like a big ask, but if there could be some sort of like online system where you could put an application in, and then you would kind of be notified of what's happening at each point. If we could come up with the milestones that are required for the town and the business, and then we would really have, the businesses would really have a good idea of what's going on, versus coming into the town and trying to find out what's going on and that sort of thing. So that was just, a couple of ideas there. I don't know if you have any questions, if you need clarification on any of that.
We actually have started that process. We just had a new website put in place, as you know, and one of the components of the website is areas of concern in the community, and certainly business is one of those, which if there's an application coming to the town, it's put on the website so people can see who it is, where they are. We haven't gotten to the point yet where we're doing tracking for you yet, but
sure.
Who knows, maybe that will happen in the next round.
Okay. And then, just thinking about how can you attract people to Penfield, like people who are potentially new business owners. And I'm just thinking, I just looked to see where SCORE and SBA were located. There used to be an office in Rochester. It looks like it's Buffalo now, which is unfortunate, but still potentially partnering with organizations like that because they may know potential business owners and then potentially pitching, okay, we've got, these different parcels that would be a perfect fit for your type of business that you're thinking about. And also just helping them a little bit too with the process. Same with partnering with local college entrepreneurship programs. Entrepreneurship is a huge thing right now. Even in our college, which is a community college, everybody wants to start their own business. So if you can partner with the students who are interested in starting their own business, then you could really, start to get your town out there to them. Hey, Penfield's a great town for starting this type of business. And then maybe just, again, talking about the different spaces that might be available and which spaces would be more conducive to certain types of businesses. And I know you have those districts set up, which is great.
Right.
But then maybe even taking it a step further and saying, okay, in this district, these are some areas that are open right now. And I know, obviously, you're working with, real estate agents are going to know that.
That's always been a big issue because you get criticized for kind of taking their business away from them, and that's not fair to them either.
Yeah.
That's their livelihood. But we do work closely with realtors, and it would be interesting to see their thoughts about how that would work. I mean, I could see they'd love the advantage of having that information from us. I'm not so sure they'd want the public to have that information.
Sure. But maybe partnering with them even,
Yep.
in some way.
Yeah.
To make that more visible. And then another thing that we've discussed at the Penfield Business Chamber is it would be wonderful if we could actually have a physical presence at the town hall, even if it's just, a small office or something, because I don't know if I haven't actually seen Webster's Chamber, but Kathy Gueno, our administrative director, mentioned that it's really pretty impressive. So I'd love to be able to have something, a starting point anyways.
Yeah.
So if that's something that we could consider in the future, that would be great.
It's really worth looking into.
Yeah, and Kathy, is willing to, she works, I forget how many hours, but probably around 10 hours or so a week. So she would actually be willing to come in and, man the office for that period of time. And then just, getting a little bit more visibility again by maybe doing some workshops. And we could even partner with you on that for the Penfield Business Chamber. We could offer workshops where you could get, and we do some of that where you're giving business updates to our members, which is awesome, but maybe taking a step further and talking a little bit more about the process of starting a business in Penfield.
Yep.
So those were just my thoughts, and I think Nick has some
Excellent.
additional ideas.
Just a couple, if I may.
Absolutely.
So I don't know all the resources and expertise and functions that you have at the town. I've had, great interaction and when I was working with everyone 4 years ago, but I can tell you some of the problems that we're faced with as a small family-owned operation. And then I do have some ideas associated to these, but maybe if I just throw some of my problems out, that could be something I'm sure that other family-owned businesses or small businesses are experiencing the same problems. So everyone in retail is experiencing staffing issues. So hiring people, keeping people is the most difficult thing right now. It's always been an issue for us, but it's tenfold post-COVID. So COVID still affects the small business significantly. A lot of that has to do with the rate of pay that's increasing and the rates that bigger companies can pay, but there's a lot more to it. A lot of that has to do with what the state is doing for people to stay home. So if there's anything that can be done there. The other thing is New York State Department of Labor, just dealing with them is very difficult. I know that's not your jurisdiction, but they don't help small businesses. They're not there. There's no phone number. They ask you to fax. Nobody faxes. So if there's any way to get a better communication path to the Department of Labor, the New York State Department of Labor, they are very supportive of people, of employees, people who've been fired, people who've quit. and it's very difficult to get support for businesses when you're in the right. So if there's anything you can do there, that would be incredible. There's a lot of changes that have happened in New York State Department of Labor, HR with HR support for people. A lot of it is very, very difficult to understand. So if there's a way to help us break it down, if there's an opportunity for a business like ours that doesn't have an HR person, they have, an owner who does all the maintenance, all the HR, all the payroll, any way to help break down the new things that are going on in HR. There's a lot of changes, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. Something specific for Penfield potentially, we do a lot of work with parks and recs in different towns. We've done very little with Penfield. So if there's a way to help support or connect to help us network with the parks and recs, we have tons of kids and families. They have tons of kids and families, and how do we form an alliance or a network together? We've done a little bit with the library, but we could do so much more. So those were some of the issues, and then maybe some of the potential solutions. Possibly partnering with colleges, community colleges, local colleges, maybe with their career centers, for helping us with recruits. We do it, but we're very small, maybe on a bigger scale. If this was something that could go to all the businesses, maybe it's something the Penfield Business Chamber in their jurisdiction, but it's just something I'm throwing out there. Amy talked about permits, occupancy, fire, so I'm good with that. I talked about HR. And then the last one is not necessarily a solution. I guess it's another potential problem I'm faced with, is empty storefronts in our building. So retail's very new to me. I'm getting to know it quite well, but the appearance of the entire plaza is very important to the families that come to our storefront. So, we lost 2 facilities during COVID, or 2 storefronts during COVID. There's one that's been empty for 5 years. We're fortunate to get a Starbucks that's coming in there. That's going to help us a lot. But if there's any way, I don't know how, maybe it was the suggestion about partnering with realty brokers or even business brokers, maybe even getting to know franchises, franchise organizations like FranNet to help these plazas with ideas of connecting to other businesses that might fit into these storefronts. But I see too many empty storefronts is basically the problem.
And we're starting to see more and more of them, which is scaring me, because we had not seen that in the past to the extent we do now. And with all due respect, your landlord is a pretty savvy landlord. I mean, he has got his hand on the pulse of everything going on in this country. And they're doing stuff all over the place. But a lot of it has to do with all these little idiosyncrasies that these people have as it relates to their landlord, as it relates to the location. Getting in and out of your place is not the easiest thing in the world. That's a big issue for a lot of people, especially in the Four Corners. It's great to have 36,000 cars a day going by your property, but if nobody's stopping, they're just going by, and there's not a lot of parking to accommodate them, and it's not easy to get in and out. It becomes cumbersome for people to want to go. It does hurt the business. But those are all excellent points. And I think I did meet you because you did have an issue with the state building code at the time that I personally met you. So yeah, we finally got through it, but it did take a while. So just another example. Yeah. Any other committee members have any questions or comments you want to make while we have her?
Well, it's interesting because point 1 on your sheet and point 4 on your sheet, I see those as interconnected, almost a tutorial on the website, if you will, to walk somebody through that would be really beneficial. Yeah. I did actually have a conversation with somebody in my neighborhood who is considering starting their own business, and we're talking about just the nightmare of understanding what's step 1. And of course, my perspective was your idea would be step 1, but how they go through the process. It's interesting that you would say that because it just came up in conversation not less than a week ago as to, is there anything that the town can help provide as types of guidance?
Well, the town actually doesn't get into it until quite late in the process. That's the big issue. When somebody calls me and says, I want to start my own business, what should I do? My first comment to them is, go find a good accountant and go find a good attorney, because you're going to need them both. because you have to set up the business, and you have to have somebody that knows how to manage your money for you while you're going through it, because it's brutal the first couple of years trying to get on your feet. You're spending a lot of money to do it, and you're not making a lot back. So that's the first thing to do. The second thing is, it kind of depends on, you've got to go down and create your DBA and all this other stuff, and then you, like you said, you've got to go to the Department of Labor. There's tax structures that you have to build with the state and the county. It's a whole bunch of things going on before you ever walk into our front door and say, we need a permit to open up a bookstore. That's the easiest part, really. By that point in time, if you're opening up a bookstore in Penfield, you're probably going to get a pretty quick approval.
Well, I wonder if that's the whole part that we're missing is the concept of, you guys, maybe the town should be involved earlier in the process with doing some
Well, we
advising.
are, but I mean-
I'm almost thinking about, like in the city, we have a bunch of small business incubators. So the idea of having, even mentoring with successful business owners in Penfield that could mentor a new business, and you have a little office here at the town hall, you can make an appointment, and they walk you through the whole process.
Well, I guess that's kind of what we thought the chamber would evolve into at some point in time.
And we could, and I think it would take, a little bit of just working together because, the Small Business Administration has a lot of those materials already
Right.
on their website. They have visual walkthroughs. I mean, I'm a visual person, so I want to see it on one page.
Right.
I want to see the flow diagram of what is it, what are the steps, and when do I do each thing? And I know you guys fit in at a certain point, but yeah, I think that would be great if we could work together to do something like that.
And a lot of times, too, I mean, you get some businesses come in, they're just quick businesses because they're low traffic generators, they're not causing problems for anybody. Then you get other businesses that come in and they're gonna be a problem to the neighbors because they're eating up a lot of the neighbors' parking spaces. They may generate noise in the evening, which is gonna be a detriment to the residences down the street. The big problem with Penfield is when they design these business districts, a lot of them were already in place because business had developed from the 1900s to the 1970s. What happened was you had all these commercial or residential developments, as Mr. Neufeld would know, building all around all these commercial districts. Now you got to be careful because you've got situations where you've got noise, you've got odors, you've got lighting, you've got all sorts of things creating impacts to residential properties around you. It may take a lot longer for some businesses than others to get in just because they may have a vending system that's going to cause an impact to a neighbor. You just never know what you're going to run into until you get a chance to get them before a board and find out what the board's concerns are.
Yep.
I think.
So do we think it's a good idea to add some language about that in the comprehensive plan that
I would say I love
we'd
your
like to
idea.
see
I think
the,
we would incorporate some of our stuff for our strategies and goals, I would think. It makes all good sense.
so could we define one of those goals as being to add a small business incubator, maybe space here at the town hall and something like that?
We can
I mean,
do, they can make any recommendation that they want to the town board. And I don't see why you wouldn't make that kind of a recommendation. I think as time goes on, it would be really nice to have them truly be a partner in the building to do that.
So are we making that recommendation now to have it in the comprehensive plan, or
That specific one, no, but I certainly would recommend that you do it.
can we do it?
Sure, absolutely.
I had a question.
Well,
I was going to take most of your comments and incorporate them in one way or another, I would think.
So I have a question,
I-
though, on the towns, go ahead, Harold.
No, sir. I had a question. How would you describe your experience with the town as far as the approval process goes and the permitting process, and what suggestions you may have? Was it friendly? Was it awkward, cumbersome?
I'm going to
I
let
can
Nick
take that.
take that because he worked mostly with the
Can I
town.
also answer after you're done, too? Because I want to
Sure, of course. So I'm sure everybody's in the same situation, but we were under a very strict deadline, timeline with construction, and we had a lot of different moving pieces, and we had to get it done in a certain amount of time. So a lot of the point at which this occurred was during the summer. So there were a lot of people who were out, and I was getting a lot of voicemail, I was getting unanswered email, but everybody was very friendly. I did come here many, many times because I had to just come here to get an answer, as opposed to trying to get an answer through phone calls or email. So I had a good experience, but it was, maybe it was bad timing, maybe it was because it was summer months, but there were a lot of people who were not necessarily responsive And I did get answers when I came here.
Just to
How do
follow
you-
up on that, one of the issues that he did run into, though, and I do remember it well, because that's how I first met you, was there was an issue with the fire rating on one of your walls, I believe. There was a miscommunication early on, and I think your contractor installed the wall and didn't do what the code required. And I think we had to have you go back and do more, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But I think it got resolved in the end. But that took place, I think.
That was at the very tail end.
It was at the very
right
tail end,
Day
yeah.
before we opened, yes.
And, and he makes a good point. I mean, you get into the summer months, the whole world is asking for permits for everything. And even things like a storage building or a shed or a pool or something like that. It all takes time to get through all those permits to make sure they're meeting code requirements.
You,
And Mr. Newfeld's probably suffered through that more than anybody else I know at this point in time for the last several
but
decades.
the way it sounds, that was more of a state building code issue.
Well, it
for
was,
what
but
you're-
it should have been picked
so-
up earlier on, I think.
But
so
what
you-
my question is to go on from there, rather, how did you find working with the local town codes and ordinances? Were they, so to speak, business-friendly or?
Yes.
And the process?
I would say yes, yeah.
They were a
Okay.
permitted activity in the zoning district in which they were in, so it was no big deal. I think you just came in for basically. a
I was
change
just
of
wondering,
use.
because it goes along with what we were saying earlier in the comprehensive code for the east side of town, whereby as far as ag business goes, to streamline process and make the permit process a little bit more user-friendly as well. That's
But-
what I was,
Yeah, good
that's
point.
what my question to the,
It was an
guests
interesting
were.
situation with them, though, too, because they were, I think they were a conditionally permitted use, maybe a permitted use, but they had to come to the zoning board of appeals, again, because we didn't really know what they were doing, and we don't know until they come and see us. But we didn't know what they were doing, and we were concerned about potential music, noise impacts coming from the site, which there aren't any, and there never haven't been any. But they were able to demonstrate that to the zoning board when they came in, and everything they told us was absolutely true. So, you know, would I rather have not had them come to the zoning board of appeals and just let them go ahead and do it? Sure. I mean, I'd love to see, my idea is to have business come in as quickly as
no,
possible.
there's only so much in the case like that you can do with
Right.
with the
That's
ordinances
problem.
on the books.
Yeah, that's the
I
problem.
know that, but just,
But it just
I
comes
was
down
more
to-
interested in process.
A built-in perception that there may be an issue, and if there's an issue, we have to have the neighbors come out and be able to address any potential concerns they have. And if they have concerns and they're valid, we have to make sure they're addressed through the development process.
Mm-hmm.
If there are no concerns, then it wouldn't be a big issue. But
Yeah.
as I said, everything they've done has been right according to code. Yes, sir.
Amy, oh,
If I could, I'm Rudy Neufeld. I work with Crosstown Construction. Roland, if I could just address that, it's a little bit different than these folks starting a new business, but I've been working with the town and all the
Right.
I've been working with all the town departments here for about 30 years, and your question is a good one. It's really a culture issue. So towns and boards and departments, they can have a philosophy of, well, we're letter of the law and we're going to make it tough on the applicant or work with the applicant. And I have found that over the decades, no matter which department I'm in, there's rules, there's guidelines, there's procedures, but every department really is working with the developer or the business owner that I have found from everybody that I've worked with. So I would say it's extremely positive. Yep, things have to be done right, there's procedures, but the overall culture is working with the applicant and the client that I've found for all these years.
Amy, I wanted to make a comment on sort of your, as George was mentioning, points 1 and points 4 here that are really connected. And especially given that you already have a role working with a community college, why not just include some of the colleges in this area? A lot of them have excellent business programs. I mean, certainly RIT and University of Rochester have graduate business programs. Include them in the sort of the workshops and so forth, but also in terms of developing your process flow. This is something that, and I used to be an assistant and an associate dean of MBA programs at a couple of universities, so I know for sure that that certainly at that level they're working on this, and undergrad business schools certainly are too. This could be something where faculty members could work with students doing it, and especially if it's graduate students, who could be doing a lot of the legwork on this, doing a lot of research, and really helping put something top-notch together for nothing, because they could potentially be getting school credit for it. And a lot of these process, I mean, there's already a lot of this work done in terms of operations research on your process flows and all this stuff.
Yes, absolutely, and I think that's a great idea. And I actually do that. I actually oversee interns myself too, and so we could definitely partner with some of the local colleges and get some interns to work with us on this. Absolutely.
And we could also jointly work with you on that from our perspective as to what they'd have to do, so.
Yeah, we
that's
would
good.
definitely need your input for sure.
Absolutely, sure. Anything else? Well, I told you I'd try to get you home as quickly as possible. So
Yeah,
I
we're
do
gonna go-
appreciate you coming, and certainly I hope our partnership continues for many years, and work with you and the PBC as much as we can. It's been a great partnership over the years.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having
Thank
us.
you.
We really appreciate it, and appreciate the opportunity to provide some input into the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Yep. Now we have Mr. Rudy
I think
Neufeld.
George has. Real quick,
Yep.
so I definitely want to capture that incubation as a recommendation, and if the rest of the group agrees, those of us that are here, I would say that I will sure would like to see it in the document and in the plan.
Nice to meet you.
Agreed.
Very good. We will do that. All right. As we let Nick go home, we have Rudy Neufeld. As I said earlier, Rudy has been the CEO of Crosstown Construction. That's how I've known him for many, many years. He has built numerous homes in Penfield. He's most notably the Winter Circle off of 5 Mile Line Road. That's where I met him 30 years ago. He's recently developed Abington Place, which is about a 101-unit senior community over off of Route 250. Barclay Square, which is just north of that. And I think we can get to those sites. Can we? Well, let's get to the other ones first so we can show them what he's done. And then the complex down on 5 Mile Lane Road in the Four Corners, townhouse project down there. So he has been all over Penfield, and he does have there's Abington. Those are all patio homes. And he would review the property with Bill Vendel recently, just south of him. So he's the reason why Bill Vendel was asking for higher density. That's Bill's property right there. So I thought it would be good to bring Rudy in for a couple reasons. Number one, he's going to be coming in to talk about a proposal that he has for a property at the terminus of State Road in Plank. It's a parcel that's been sitting there for many, many years vacant. And also just talk a little bit about the housing industry and what you encounter as a builder and what you've been encountering for the last year and a half or so as a builder. Why don't we start with what you'd like to do, and then we can talk a little bit about the history of building in Penfield as it relates to what you've done for us.
Okay. Would you like me to start with a quick presentation on the
Yes.
State Road property?
I'm sorry, just to let you know, Rudy is also here because he is looking to develop this parcel, and he's going to need a recommendation, or he's going to request a recommendation from you to change the zoning from R1 to half acre?
Everything surrounding it's 120, so I'd leave it to the board's discretion, but that would seem to make sense if everybody looks at it. And
Yeah, let's take a look at that zoning map before we get started. So everything in gray is R120. Everything in green around it is RR1. And with that, I'll let you jump in.
Okay, I think a couple of those angles might be, should be great too, but I didn't really get into the square feet. So this piece of property is interesting. I'll give you just a little history so the board has an idea. It's been owned for quite a number of years by a gentleman, Mr. Gasberry. They live in the town of Penfield off of 5 Mile Line Road. Him and his partner have had this for quite a number of years. The goal of this was, I won't bore you with too much details, but it's kind of interesting. They were going to build their own homes here. They're masons. I remember 30, 40 years ago working with my dad as a kid. They were my dad's age. They're now 86 years old. so a little younger. So this was going to be the property for their homesteads and their family, and they have daughters, and they were going to build homes there for the family. But they've now aged, and they've decided to sell it. So the property is 14 and a half, roughly 14 and a half acres. The entrance to it, if you see the little green space that comes off of Shoecraft Road there, that's where the entrance of the development will be, and we do have some sketches. So this property could be developed, whether the zoning changes or not, really has two options in our opinion. Could be developed as a single-family community, and if you scroll up a little bit, Doug, to the redstone down below us there, yep, yep. If you look at that one, that's developed as a typical residential community. It's a nice community, did a great job, but as you can see, to comply with what has to be done for code, there's no green left at all because there can't be when you develop the swales and the drainage that's required. So that could be done on this property, but we also have a quick sketch. I spoke briefly with Mr. Costello and the supervisor, and I did my own dummy sketch, and they said, no, I didn't have to have BME do an expensive one. So this is not terribly professional. But when I was looking at it, to develop it, regardless of what the board decides on the zoning, as a residential subdivision, it still would be nice, but there would be no forestry left. It's pretty nice forest in there. There just wouldn't be the ability to keep any of it. If we develop it as a townhouse property, which I will show you some photographs, a few years back, we bought a piece on 250. I had worked with the gentleman. He had a nursery there forever, and it was a 6.5 acre piece on right on 250, and we developed that into a 12-unit townhome project, a total of 12 buildings. And what we were able to do there, without getting too belabored, we made it an HOA. So the HOA is responsible for the drainage, the roadway, and it allows us to shrink setbacks. If we wanted to leave a 20-foot buffer, which we couldn't do on a residential standard, yeah, I've got a couple photographs of that. That's the entrance to it. So we were able to, on the left, we have a pond and the little entrance sign. On the right side, yeah, we had a little half-acre park for the residents. And then I've got some photographs, Doug. If you look, yeah, right down behind there, this property is a little bit narrower than the one I'm looking at, but we were able to leave about a 20-foot wide treed buffer. So if you kind of look down past that blue sculpture, the entire property that surrounds it, and I built the subdivision on the other side, so they were my neighbors too, we were able to leave a 20-foot buffer all the way around. My neighbors loved it, and of course the new neighbors love it. In fact, I remember at the board meeting, some of the neighbors came out and spoke in favor of it. If it was developed as a residential 3-lot subdivision or whatever it was, it would have been gone. And we feel that we can do even a better job with the new project, and I'll review the sketch in a minute. Here I only had about 20 feet. Everything was a little tighter. Here we can have at least 30 to 40 feet of buffer if the HOA maintains it. So if there's a drainage issue, the town doesn't get called. Our drainage basically goes from the property line where it has to go in a residential. It'll move in about 30 feet. We create the drainage swales. The HOA takes care of the pond, et cetera. So this little sketch here is pretty true to scale, and all the green around it that you see would be basically untouched woods. We're a little bit lower than the properties around us, so all the drainage goes this way, which is fine. We'll create that, but we'd still be able to leave that buffer and do our interior drainage within the property and leave at least a 30-foot treed buffer. So if I'm living on State Road, I haven't met with all these people yet, but I certainly will as this progresses if everybody feels that it's positive. We always meet with every neighbor. We invite them to our office. I show them what we're doing, get their input. And I'm certain if I was a neighbor, I would want to keep a 30-foot buffer. So that's what that is. And then I've also selfishly done something else here. If you look to the right there of 923 above, go up a little, yeah, right there. That is I know you're familiar with it. You've built a few of them. I don't know what they call them, Jim, greenhouses or the little assisted living.
St. John's built 2 greenhouses in conjunction with a townhouse project over on Fellows Road a couple of years ago. We can take, I don't know if you can get a video or a picture of that, but they actually look like single-family homes. But in essence, I think they support 8 individuals in each unit, if I'm not mistaken.
What I liked, and I went through them, it's not a nursing home, it's not really full assisted, so it's for people that are healthy, little elderly, they still want to be somewhere, they have a cafeteria, a little gathering room, you have your own private bedroom. So to me, it's a really nice place to be, and as these years progress, I might end up there. So I thought it'd be a really nice opportunity to get some of our current elderly folks into something. Typically, those end up on a busier road or an open field because they're the least expensive to do. This would literally be tucked into that pretty little forest over there. So I think it would make an excellent opportunity. I mean, I'm not there yet, but for 10 or 20 town residents that would like to live in a really pretty place. So that's not a must, but I thought a lot about it, and I thought it'd be a really excellent opportunity. So the townhouses would be to the south, and then that little piece of woods would be cut out for that. Now that's just an idea. That doesn't have to happen. But I know that's going to be a bigger need every year that ticks by, is taking care of our elderly. So that was kind of the overview of where this, what I see with this project, and I'll answer whatever questions the board may have.
Rudy, how big is this property? Oh, sorry.
Trees are on there now.
You have a mix. It's I don't really know the whole history of it. You have some hardwoods, some more scrub stuff, but it's a pretty nice. I took a few pictures. I didn't get too detailed because once you get into trees, you can't really see what you're seeing. That couple of views, Doug. Yep. Back a couple, right there. So this is the view from Shoecraft. The yellow house would be next to where our entrance is. And then the left picture with the mailbox, all the neighbors that are on Plank Road, that's the wood line that they're looking at. And that's pretty indicative of what you see all around it. And I'd always, of course, be happy to walk the site with anybody to get a better feel for what that looks like.
What size of the townhouse lots would there, how many square feet?
I didn't get to that yet. The project at Barclay Park, which we looked at earlier, those are about 2,000 square feet.
The lot?
Roland, could you speak into your, yep.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. The lot sizes?
Yeah, the lot
2,000?
size, it's a duplex building, so there's 2
Okay.
units, and the lots are about 100 by 140.
Okay.
And that's what you see drawn there. And then, of course,
Are the lot line, common lot line going through the duplex?
right through the demising wall, yep.
Okay.
So you, in that scenario, you own the building, all the maintenance is done for everything. Outside, you still take care of your building, but all the exterior is done.
Is that area sewered, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is, okay.
Yep.
And you take care of your drainage by yourself or
Yeah,
private?
yeah, the HOA takes care of drainage. If you look at my little sketch, and this isn't gospel yet, but I worked with BME for a long time. You could probably hear that name quite a bit. They do the engineering, and a gentleman, his name is Martin Yonda. He's the expert at wetlands and all of that, so he's walked it with me already. There's no federal or state wetlands on the property, but he still likes to look at it and make sure everything's good. So probably down to the bottom, right by the fire hall, that's where the retention facility, water cleaning would be. And with the HOA, the town isn't called for the pond cleaning, they're not called for road snow plowing. It's just an HOA issue. We've done 9 of them, and they really function pretty well. I don't know, what have you heard, Jim? Ever an issue on any of these HOA projects from the
No.
town?
No, they work well. I'm looking at how you gain access to the pond. I assume you're doing it off of State Road for maintenance purposes?
Yeah, I didn't get to that level of design
Right.
yet, but.
It's still very preliminary.
The fire hall may say, hey, I don't know what the staff will say, but we certainly have the options to look at that.
And these are one-story, are you proposing one-story, two-story?
Yep, the
One-story?
townhouses would be one story. Now, if it was developed residential, which I don't think it's the best use of that, since so many folks are looking in Penfield to be in a townhome that's maintained. Now, if it's single-family, still would be nice. We'd do it as well as we possibly could. There wouldn't be many trees left. But now you have a half-acre or whatever size lot the board determines. But then you have swing sets and sheds and playgrounds and all those things that families need and want. With the townhomes, you have none of that. It's a townhome, it's quiet. So I think that, and with having good sewer there, 11 feet deep, it just makes sense to get a density that conforms to the area and get a good use of the property for the future residents.
What would
Jim-
happen with all the traffic?
24 units, I'm not by any means an engineer or a statistician, but 24 units don't even tick on a traffic study. So they wouldn't even make an increment to make a difference. And the nice part about townhouses, when the surrounding community is getting up and going to work, these people are home. So they're basically moving traffic after the families are gone, and they're usually home before they come. So it's not that 7 to 8 and 5 to 6 traffic. So we found the other project is on 250, which is extremely busy, and we've just had no issues whatsoever.
Right, but you build enough of those, eventually you do have traffic issues, and I'm assuming Plank Road is where the main thoroughfare is gonna
This would
be?
come off of Shoecraft.
Off Shoecraft?
Yeah, I don't know traffic counts, we haven't gotten into that yet, but with the busyness of that road, and they'll do a traffic study, our guys will, but
And I'll bet it passes. I'll bet it passes. So,
Rudy, is that your only entrance and exit off of Shoecraft?
that's where I'd want it to be. It could be on State Road, that's busier. Shoecraft is the sleepiest of the three options. The entrance to it is nicely wooded, so it basically would tuck that project in, and from the road, you wouldn't even know the project was there. So I like the entrance there. It could come from Plank Road, and it certainly could come from State Road, but I think once we get into the details, I'm quite certain everyone's going to be most comfortable with the entrance on Shoecraft.
Jim, real quick on the drainage, I got a question for you. For the HO, if they were to set up an HOA, make them file a stormwater maintenance agreement with the town?
Yes, and the other part of that, too, is that the EPA requires, and the DEC requires a yearly inspection of that facility.
Yeah, that'd
make
be
sure
in
it's
your
working.
agreement.
We actually do it every 3 years. As you know, your son was actually one of the guys doing those inspections. But we do it every 3 years, and they are responsible for ensuring that it's done properly.
As a private facility,
Yeah.
we would send
Yeah.
them out reminder letters, let them
Yeah.
know
And-
that
and
they need
he's-
to hire an engineering firm who has to come through, inspect the facility.
You
If there
send
are
them a
recommendations.
reminder
on
letter?
Areas where they
Yeah,
are
so
deficient.
reminder letter.
just-
But his HOAs have complied. There's no
If
I
there
know
are
CME just
deficiencies,
completed
we
that.
give them 30 days and sort of a fix-it letter gets back. So if they do, their engineer does submit and say, there is heavy siltation or something like that.
I know
we
at
say,
work, I
"It
just
needs
sent
to be
out about
remedied within
45
30
such
days."
letters.
Yeah,
So it's-
yeah, you have to do it. You have to do it.
Rudy, how big is this parcel? And can you just kind of give us a sense of how many acres of it is going to be devoted to the physical units of housing? And then how many acres is going to be left wooded or
Yep.
green?
I'll be happy to try to answer that. If you go back to my sketch, and again, I'm not an engineer, so it's not down to the inches, but it's accurate and it's to 50 scale. So the project that you see there in the white, without any of the green where the townhouses would be, the whole project is 14 acres. So I don't know if you can do an overview, Doug, of the Barclay Park subdivision. The one he's going to show you, so you get a nice overview from the top, that project right there, that's the 24 units, and that was on 6.8 acres. So, and that was, we worked with the town board and got into some incentive zoning. So on that 6.8 acres, there's 24 units, and we think it fits nicely. This project, if the board so decides or recommends to comply with the other zoning around the neighborhood of R120, it would be probably about somewhere in the 24 to 26 units. So we would have 14 acres with 24 to 26 units, or whatever the board finally comes up with, whereas here, you have the same number of units on 6.8 acres. So you'd have about, please don't quote me on this, but if you look on the green space of the 14 acres, if we don't build a little senior living place, you probably have about 4 to 5 acres of green space. If we build that little community in the woods, you probably end up with somewhere 3 to 5 of trees, and they're just left untouched. We go in and take dead trees out, they clean out debris, and other than that, no. As soon as equipment goes into a wooded area, it's done. So we just literally don't touch them except handwork. And that's my best guess at the acreage, but once the engineers get in, but that's pretty accurate what I've drawn there.
And I'm sorry, you may have said it already, but I'm thinking if the recommendation doesn't go through and it stays 1 acre, how many units did you say you were going to get?
If it's 1 acre, then it would be about 12 to 13 either single-family homes, which I don't think is the best use. And I wouldn't have the heart yet. I don't have to develop it. I wouldn't have the heart to denude that place for 12 homes and make a total empty farm field for all those neighbors. So I'm in favor of the townhomes, but, I'm anxious to see what the board recommends.
Can we go to Scribner Road? So this is a situation a couple of years ago where this developer was proposing to put in townhouses on this project with the same premise that he would preserve more wooded area. The neighbors really did not want that. I'm not sure the neighbors wanted anything there, but they didn't want that for some reason, thinking that it wasn't going to matter whether they had houses or townhouses. It was all going to get, denuded. So the town said, all right, if you don't want townhouses, we'll go with single family. And I think he's got 10 or 12, Doug? And he made the same claim that
he's got 13.
Okay, so he made the same claim that Rudy is making now, and this is the result of single-family detached housing. They actually did have to take out almost all of the trees on that site. And it's not that they want to do it, but they have to put in utilities, they have to do grading, they have
They got
to.
13 lots.
It does take up a lot of the room on these properties when you start messing around with the larger homes on individual lots.
Rudy, can you tell us, in terms of your building practices, one of the things we've talked about in here is sustainability and trying to see if builders are in the process of converting some of their materials and processes over to kind of more green and sustainable uses. Can you tell us a little bit about where you stand on that?
I can. I don't have a great record on that. It's not a lot of things we can do. What bothered me, we frame a house, and there's a 20-yard dumpster full of clean, wonderful lumber. So we contacted Waste Management and said, we'll be willing to pay extra. Can we fill one dumpster with just clean wood, no nails, no nothing, and that can be recycled? I don't know what you would do with it, but at least you'd have a dumpster full of something you could do with this clean wood. And they said, no, we don't do that. And we said, well, we'll pay extra. And I said, we don't do that. What comes in the dumpster goes to one spot, and that's it. So I would love to be open to that. I don't have a great record with it, but certainly always worrying about sustainability. And if there's a way I can save something, I'd love to save it. But we don't have a lot of good things in place right now because we just don't know how to do it.
How about in terms of the types of materials you use in building the houses, though?
We don't really have any unique things there. There's not a lot of different things. The code calls for the walls to be this material, the insulation, which we comply with, of course. What we have gotten into a little bit, which I'm a big fan of, is foam insulation. I wouldn't call that a green practice, but it's, I think, much better, costs a little bit more. And people say, well, I don't care about my insulation. If it does a good job, I'm not going to spend an extra $5,000 for foam. So we've tried some practices, but I wouldn't say, you know, we do a great job with it. We're trying to do what we can, but we're right now at the industry standards. But would always love to have suggestions if there's practical things that we could do that doesn't cost too much for the consumer. We'd love to try it.
Following up on Donna's comment, and maybe, and we've talked about this in the past with the committee, but it might be good if you could just kind of walk through the kind of costs you incur from the day that you see a piece of property that you like to the point where you can actually build on the site, and what it costs to do that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. And of course, we understand and we're very sensitive, never in a presentation to say to a board, well, if you don't give me what I'm asking for, it's going to cost me X amount of money. That doesn't make sense. It's not your department. But for example, the Barclay Park project, that's 24 townhomes. So from a developer standpoint, if you get a piece of property, we'll use this one for an example. Let's say the piece of property cost $400,000 or $300,000. Engineering to get that all together is about $100,000, give or take. And then development is about $400 a lineal foot. So if you build a 500-foot-long road, which is about what you see there, so now you got 500, you got about 250,000 in developing. So you got around $700,000 to $800,000 you've invested. And that's not the board's problem, but it'll give you a nice insight into it. And of course, you got to go to the bank for that money. Now you got to build a model home, about $500,000 by the time you're done, 400 if you're building a little one. So now you got about $1.2 million into this thing, and you fly your open house flag. The bank, of course, is getting their money every month, and now you sell a house day one. Let's say I open on Sunday and I sell a house. Well, that takes about 8 months to close. So you have about a 2-year window where you have, to me, I'm a little builder, but a substantial amount of money invested before you see a return. But that's my business, and I'm good with it. So I think sometimes what a board may not consider is, let's say they'll say, well, it's a good project, we like it, but, you know, we don't want to prove this, so do a traffic study. Go away and do a that's $25,000 to $30,000. Or not this town, but I've been in other towns. They said, well, we want you to do a tree study. Literally get a surveyor to label every tree, tell you how big it is. Now, they're all going to come down, but you're still spending $10,000 on a tree study because they said so. So, you know, I've said sometimes, I want to do a great job. I know the business. I've been doing it a long time. And not in the town, but I've encountered it other places. If somebody said, well, we're going to make you do something just because we can, I would rather give that $10,000 or $20,000 to a kids' charity than spend it on something that was spent just because somebody had the authority to say, do it. But of course, I know how that's not how it works.
And so the end profit of the entire project is what, about 5% for the developer?
Yeah,
So?
and there's a great study. The Home Builders has a book, National Home Builders. You guys should get it. It's called Cost of Doing Business. The newest one was 2021 or 2020. They're about a year and a half behind. And there's no secrets. A third of the home builders don't make money. They go broke. A top 25% in the California markets, in the big markets, they make 10, 15% profit. The average builder makes 3 to 5% profit. So if you build a $300,000 house and you did your homework and no disasters happened, you got $15,000 to $18,000 in profit. And they did an interesting study at the home builders. They did a survey, asked the typical person, how much do you think a builder makes in profit? And the average of all the answers was 40%. Well, if I made 40%, I'd have flown in here with a helicopter and flown home with the same helicopter.
So I have I guess a build-on question to the cost. That one of the other things we've been talking about is the cost of housing and bringing in, we'll say, net new or younger. And I know right now the market's a little crazy, but
It is.
But generally, when we talk about a townhouse, is the cost per unit per the purchaser like a little bit lower? Is it more in what you call a starter home level, or are you intending these more for senior folks that are maybe downsizing? What's the
I think that the Barclay Park, just to give you a little view of that, we designed that to be, I don't want to use the word luxury, sounds snooty, but to be upscale, because we have people like me, we have dentists in there, doctors in there, some physicians. They had the big home. A lot of them were in Penfield, a big 3,000, whatever size home, and they still wanted the amenities and the luxury and the quality, but they wanted it small. So those homes started in the 300, 350 range, and they're now in the, some of them in the 5, even 600,000 range. So the people aren't necessarily coming here because they want to scale back. They just want a maintenance-free, a beautiful community that they can feel comfortable with. And we spent, like, if you look at the front, I mean, we do a lot of the work ourselves, but, you know, there's $100,000 that's spent just on the front entrance. That's not mandated by anybody. That's me, because that's how I'd want it to look if I lived there. So we spend a tremendous amount of money making it have a real sense of arrival. And the Gasberry property has got even more potential to feel even better, because it's literally going to go through a pretty little woods. You won't even know the project's back there. So those residents can, it's going to be quite a lovely spot for those folks.
And what do the HOA fees look like for one of those projects?
Here, they're about $250 a month, and that gives you all the outside maintenance, snowplow, garbage, everything to do outside, except your structure, that you'd have to fix that. So, and these would probably be somewhere in the same range. Of course, the higher number of units, the fee goes down a little bit.
So you're thinking from a starting price range of the $400,000 price
Yeah,
you're talking?
yeah,
Okay.
you almost have to today. In fact, one of the gals in the planning department is looking for a home, and she made a comment the other day. I was talking to her about helping her find a house, and she said, we cannot find a new home that starts under $400,000. You can't build it. So land cost is funny. For decades, we would budget $5,000 to $8,000 for a raw piece of land to build one unit. Now, it's $40,000 and $50,000. Lumber used to be $30,000 to $35,000 for say a 2,000 square foot ranch home. Now it's $110,000. $110,000, $90,000 is lumber. Electrics, everything's gone up a little bit.
Rudy, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You can tell the committee, I know the answer to this. Tell them how much in the last 10 years you've been spending on stormwater pollution prevention.
Wow, don't bring that up, because I could get in trouble. A lot of money. I don't think I've
And
taken
a little
the time.
about what that is.
The stormwater? Well, yeah, that, I don't know how that happened through the government, and I'm a firm believer in keeping our waterways clean, no question about it. And if I'm building on a major creek or a tributary, yeah, there should be some implementation and some inspection, but the process doesn't matter. If I'm building here, no streams, no water, no nothing. You're doing weekly, sometimes bi-weekly inspections, so that's $200 to $400. I have 11 subdivisions, so we're spending hundreds of thousands on this SWIP implementation, which that's the law, that's the way it is. But that definitely affects the cost of housing. And I like the idea, I just think it's so over-regulated, but it is what it is, and that's what we do. Yeah, but it's extremely expensive. I like it, I just don't think it's monitored well enough to be practical, but that's not my department.
So we have been talking about affordable housing and how to achieve that, especially here. Obviously, the only way you can achieve affordable housing is if you build build multi-residential type structures, and even they are going to be costly, just based on the cost of construction and the purchase of land. So to go out and build a single-family detached residence in Penfield, or probably any other suburbs around Rochester at this point in time, you're talking about a $400,000 or $500,000 home now.
Yeah, now, I would love, not that I need another project, and I know the supervisor always yells at me when I tell him this is my last project. I would love to build a community where people, little families, could come to Penfield for, there was a day when 200,000 was huge, you were a millionaire, but even in the 2 to 250, I think it could be done. I was reading an interesting little news thing early this morning with the billionaire Elon Musk. That's the guy, right, from SpaceX? I don't know what he's worth, $100 billion or something. He lives in a 375 square foot casita. There's a company in California building them, prefabbed. It's a little 3-room house, adorable little thing. And that's what the guy, and there's like a, I think it said 70,000 people waiting list for these little houses. Now, I'm not suggesting that, but it would be wonderful to have a 40 or 50 or 100 lot subdivision in Penfield where we could provide, they wouldn't be the McMansions, but families are going the other way now too. If we could give them 1,600 square feet, simply designed, but that would mean planning, zoning, and town board would have to have a change of mind. You know, if we had a piece of property, and there is some, we can't be, it'll have to be probably at least 4 units to an acre. You know, we had to get away from these 10-foot sidelines. So there's a way to do it. It would minimize the cost to build it. The development teams, we'd have to work together to minimize the process. I think it could be done, and I'd love to, even if I never build it, I'd love to be part of a team to at least examine it. It could be done. We could bring housing to Penfield for $250, around in that, in my opinion, and give the people a really nice community. But it would take a changed mindset of all the boards to say, okay, this piece makes sense. Let's rethink zoning. Let's get away from this half-acre, 10-foot side setbacks, 50-foot rear setbacks. People don't want that anymore. Even families. They would be happy with 30 feet in the backyard, 35 feet, 40 feet. And that's what you'd have to do. Now, instead of the unit being 75 or 80,000 for one house, you cut it down to 30. Well, you just cut 40,000 bucks out of the cost of the house for this family. So it could be done. I really do think it could be done. And you have some parcels that I think are ideal for that.
Well, the problem we're running into now is we're running out of sanitary sewer capacity, and you know that better than anyone.
Yep.
You've been looking over the years now for other infill spots, and this is one of them. But we do not have a lot of sanitary capacity for expansion of new development. That's something we're going to have to look at.
That's above my pay grade, but you got to look at it at some point for keeping families.
We have to, you're right.
have to.
It has to be examined because we will not have much more development for families if the rate we're going now.
So the question becomes, how do we turn that discussion into a recommendation that we would put into?
Well, the things that you didn't leave out, though, is the fact that any infill parcel that's surrounded by half-acre lots is not going to be receptive to lots with higher density than them.
No, and that wouldn't work for anything like this. 12 acres, it'd have to be 50 acres. You know, I know that holy grail is 250, but at some point, somebody's going to have the courage to say, okay, reasonably, which one of these farm fields could develop nicely, maybe some screening, berming, to be a nice community for 50 or 60 or 80 families that want to stay in Penfield.
Why would you say that?
But that's where the big pieces are left.
But why does that mean they need to be developed? I mean,
They
we
don't
need to,
need to
we
be.
need to have agriculture in Penfield, and if
Yep.
you develop that, where are you going to get your food from?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it, that's the only place really that whoever the committee would be, if you look at where is there enough land that's, it's not wooded, easy to develop, on sanitary sewer, at some point, might not be while I'm even around here, but at some point, that's the only places left to economically put together a project to attract that family at that number. You know, the little projects are, it costs as much to engineer 14 acres as it does 100. So the engineers, they're not cheating, it's just the same amount of time, same amount of meetings, the same everything for 5 lots, 10 lots, or 100 lots. So economy of scale has to be one of those big pieces. There's nothing left on this side that's up 50 or 80 acres. And it's, you know, not probably my time to look at that, but somebody's gonna someday.
Well, I would argue that if you want to build affordable housing in Penfield, you don't have to spend $400,000 to $500,000 and build these McMansions. You could probably spend half of that and build ranches, 1,200 foot ranches, and do an infill project like that. You're not going to look at that kind of engineering expenses, and you could probably sell them for $250, and then do an infill housing project, and try to get some assistance in subsidizing the sales price. And then I think you could sell those all day.
Yeah, I've never worked with subsidized numbers before, but with Mr. Costello's help, and I've done a lot of infill projects, they are tougher. If you have 3 or 4 acres, you're not going to be economically set to give them that little project, but I don't mind the work of an infill project. If I like the project and I think I can make it look good, I don't mind dealing with the issues at all. I just don't think the little infills would work for getting the buyers, future buyers, under that 300,000 mark.
I think something, though, that we have to consider.
You don't think you could build go ahead.
This is a comp plan that we're looking 10 years out. So I think we have to broaden our perspectives here on what residential housing means now, what it used to mean, what it means now. I mean, if you look at over the past, say, 60 years or something, the escalation in the size of the average family home has been, it's probably doubled, at least in what the same number of people would consider a normal-size home. Now things have to be bigger and bigger and bigger, and Rudy's nodding his head to be the bad. So I think we have to think a little more broadly, think a little more creatively about what does residential housing look like going forward. To Rudy's point, I think people are realizing that having free time is often a lot better than having a big yard. And that having communal space, a shared communal space that you don't have to take care of, but all the houses back to, a big open space, and maybe there's a playground in one part of it for kids, and maybe there's a paddle tennis area in another part, and there's just a lot left green, and there's some barbecues and things like that, so you don't have to own everything yourself. So I think we need to be thinking, and maybe we need some experts to share some forward-thinking ideas with us about alternative types of communities that still make sense for a town like Penfield. We're not talking like 70-story high-rises, and we're not talking about yurts. We're talking about something very, very in between that, but where maybe community is what we think of first, and then how to house the people to make a community is the second part of that.
That was the reason I asked about the cost of the townhomes, because doing my own research, I know the townhomes can range from a fairly inexpensive townhome to, $200,000 to, as you talk, $700,000-800,000 townhomes are also. This last batch that he showed us that were built for individuals that were looking for those high end. My question is it viable for you to build townhomes in a smaller lot, like a 17-acre lot, that would be around that $200,000-300,000, and is that something that's viable, A, and B, is that something we think would actually attract young home buyers?
Yeah, if you're asking me, it could be done. This property wouldn't be ideal for it, even if it's recommended to rezone 24 units. That's not enough now. A good friend of mine, as you all know well, Jim Barbato's building on the corner. It's actually Webster. And it was a nice piece of property. I tried to buy it myself for quite a long time. It's a beautiful piece right there. And I think there's, I don't remember, I think 200 units. Now you have an economy of scale. I haven't seen his whole marketing plan yet. We haven't talked, but I don't know what the selling price will be. But I'm guessing it's gonna be somewhere in that 250-ish range or whatever he determines. I don't know.
I'd be shocked.
Higher than that?
Oh,
300?
Well, he built the ones on Fellows Road, and those are out of range now, I think.
Yeah, they started like 200, but I think
That
they
was-
went
In the
way
day,
up.
they started in the.
That was how many
upper
years
two
ago,
degrees,
though?
But that was
5 years ago.
10 years
Over
ago?
10 years, 12 years ago?
Yeah, well,
2010,
but
2011?
To Donna's point,
Yeah.
if we're gonna be looking down the road, is this something, do we believe that, if you can find something that would be economy of scale in Penfield and wouldn't cause terrific traffic issues when we did the study and yada, yada, is this something that is something we could, as a group, get behind and recommend? At least the studies would be done, right, and that we would put we would put the recommendation forward to do the studies and make that part of the zoning thought process to, as some of these backfill parcels that would be big enough to do that. Again, I'm not a big fan of eating up farmland for that. I think that it's short-sighted, but I do think that there must be other larger parcels that would be maybe on the edge that could fall into that. I mean, again, like we just looked at a parcel. We got in the van and went and looked at a parcel that I think could be.
Are you talking about over on Jackson in that area
Yeah.
over there? Yeah.
So eventually,
but the thing
once
is,
the sewer gets to that parcels appear to be large enough to sustain what you're talking about.
but the big problem is that, and no knock on you, Rudy, but obviously developers are there to make money. And if you have to spend X amount of dollars and you can't get X amount back with plus what you need, what's the incentive for you to build a $250,000 house or a $150,000 house versus a $500,000 house where you're going to get more return? I mean, somebody has to give you an incentive for you to do something like
I
that.
think you gotta look at different ways of getting those incentives, whether they're, tax rebates or.
He's not going to get the tax rebate. It's the owner of the house that's going to get it, and he
Well-
gets nothing for building the $150,000 unit.
But it
That's
would be,
because I would disagree with you. I think you could give him all kinds of rebates and you'd have to look creatively to find some grant programs, but they build low-income housing all over the country. Most of it is subsidized to some degree. I'm not aware, except for that parcel, those ones that you guys built down on 5 Mile Line years ago, that ever were subsidized.
No, they were not subsidized.
I thought those years ago, weren't they? when they
No,
were
it's
built?
Pennacott, Lone Oak Estates, no, those are not subsidized.
Okay, well, so there probably isn't any subsidized that's gone, and maybe that's what we ought to be thinking about in the long-term plan, is how do we get different grant programs or community programs that will subsidize and make it so that Rudy could build. and
Well,
make
I mean,
money.
they're out there, and certainly the town does take advantage of this. At home leasing and Pastone are doing that on 250 right now.
And what are those selling for?
Well, those units are probably going to be rental units. They're
Most
not
of them
going
are
to be
rental,
sales.
and a lot of
Yeah.
the big subsidized
They're rental
programs
unit.
are more supportive
That's
of,
the incentive for the owner, the developer,
multi-residential.
is to get back the rent.
Well, there's tax credits, there's, people are buying and selling tax credits all
I'm
the
just saying
time. I
that
mean,
it's
there's a lot
not
of
the
different
easiest thing in
ways
the
you can-
world, and the developer is the one who has to get the incentive, not the people owning the houses, because
Well,
he's
if
the
it
one
was-
building them.
If it was easy, we wouldn't be here trying to figure out how to do it.
Right.
Yeah,
So, I
agreed.
mean, there's
It's
a
not
lot of
easy.
different ways you can get tax credits to build subsidized housing. Whether it applies to Penfield, I don't know. I don't know that much about it. I mean, we build hundreds of units in the city that are subsidized.
Right.
So could you take the area down by Panorama, which you converted to commercial, and build a 10-story high-rise down there and make it subsidized housing? Why not? Why not take advantage of
You
the
could,
areas
but then what you're doing is, you're not getting any taxes from the subsidized housing. You're getting taxes from the
All right, so
industrial
you- I mean,
development down
So you
there.
you have to do a pilot agreement then, that you're gonna get tax money out of that. So, I mean, I think you have to think a little creatively.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You've got a shortage of land, you wanna build, you wanna get first-time home buyer housing into Penfield, young people, they're not gonna come in and buy a $300,000 or $400,000 house unless they're making a lot more money than we are.
Well, that's what they're doing now. That's the problem. If you come here at the age of 33 or 34, which is the average age now, you're buying a
The average age
$350,000
in
house.
Penfield's 47.
Right.
Right, but I'm
It's
guessing you're
getting
not
up
trying
near
to
50.
attract those people, you're trying to
Yeah,
attract
I
younger
mean,
people.
yeah,
A younger person coming out of college isn't going to spend $400,000.
No, they're not.
Or
That's
pay
why you're seeing-
$5,000 a month rent.
That's why
So-
you're seeing a lot of apartments going up all of a sudden, because that's the only way they can get, and even those apartments now are going for $3,500 a month.
But if our job is to think of what is going to be happening in 2030, not now, that's how we should be planning. So do we think there's going to be more houses available or apartment needs in the year 2030? Where would you put those? Would you put those in a perfectly good farm field, or would you put them down at Panorama or any other place that you might have developed already and no one's going to object to it?
Panorama doesn't have that much land left to do anything.
I'm
but-
using that as an
Yeah,
example.
but I mean, you don't have that much land here. That's what I'm saying, is you've got 384 units or properties in town for a commercial. The rest of it's all residential, and then what's left here is all on the east side of town, as you noted, which is vacant farmland.
But you're talking
I
about
think
right now,
Roland
we're
has
talking
something to
about
say.
2030. So our recommendation could be to rezone some of your stuff that you said is not residential and rezone it now and make that recommendation.
It's almost all developed. There's not much left that's not developed in the commercial zones.
Right, but maybe you need to change commercial zone, your thought of what a commercial zone is. I think you gotta
Well,
think
what
out
I'm
of the
saying
box.
is you got a
and-
Wegmans and you got a Tops and you got a Target and you got a Walmart in our commercial zones. That's all we have. And everything else is built around them. They're already built out. There's no vacant land left to do those kinds of things. That's the big problem we're running into now. That's why we created the mixed-use district, was to allow for that kind of thing to happen.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the mixed use. I mean, I was thinking that seems,
But maybe keeping all of our back of our minds, the
Yeah.
concept of mixed-use overlay districts.
Roland, microphone.
Could we keep in mind, maybe sorry about that, and not at Rudy's time expense, but made discussion at a later point, mixed-use overlay districts in commercial and industrial zoning?
Yes, as you know, as we
mean,
talked
not
about
now,
earlier,
I didn't
as
mean for-
commercial development starts to wane because of big boxes now competing with Amazon.
Right.
Uh,
No,
no,
I
it's-
mean at a later discussion.
Yeah,
I'm saying.
absolutely.
Where you have
Rudy's here
residential
to discuss the rezoning
and
of
commercial
property as
and
much as where we've gotten off
Industrial
on.
uses
Yeah.
all
Love to be part of this.
coming together.
I know you
Yeah,
do.
that's-
It's your
we're
life,
getting a
I
little
know.
off.
No, it's a good point,
But,
and we do need to do that. We need to look for alternative housing. There's no question about it.
And I think the goal, I'm going to be blunt, we're not going to solve all the nuances, but I do think that recommending that there is a more in-depth review and study of again, like you said, the options of getting other resources to help reduce the cost. So even if we as a team, we don't have all of the answers, we can say, you should really look at this, and here's some suggestions for possibly setting up some boards in the future that could focus purely on how do we make that happen.
And I don't think affordable housing should just be high-rises all over the place either. I mean, you want to provide land for kids to play on and, have some privacy. That's not the answer, I don't think.
well, and I think
That's what's caused half the problems in this country.
one
is
of the
'cause it's all
things-
high-rise development.
one of the things that also needs to happen is, as part of what you're suggesting, George, is, again, sort of creatively thinking broadly about all the different ways. I mean, Chuck brought up some really great points, sort of all the different ways that affordable housing can come to be affordable. It can be affordable because it's cheap in the first place. It can be affordable because you're subsidized. It can be affordable because you rent to own, which you hardly ever see those programs anymore, but there are such things available. It can be affordable because you work off something, very much the way people work things off in a Teach for America type program. So I think we have to not only think about, well, what does this housing look like and where do we put it, but all the different possible ways to come into a residential setting, whether you're a renter or an owner. But if the goal is having more owners at younger ages or at older ages who will stay in our community and diversify our community in that way, we have to think about all the different sort of financial and sort of ways within our social system that are going to help them get there.
Yeah, and I think making the recommendation to form a committee with some outlines as to what we would like the output to be is something we can put in the comprehensive plan, and we can make that recommendation.
Yes.
But I don't want to lose track of the fact Rudy came here because he wanted to ask us if we would consider a recommendation to change the zoning for that particular piece of property in order to put an additional number of so I don't know if we ever got around to asking him questions that were specific about that. I kind of
Please
want to
do.
get back to that
Yeah.
focus for him, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're still here.
I'm still here. I'm enjoying this. I could sit here all night long.
you could.
Yeah, so I have just two questions then. So I like the thought process of the center that would allow for I don't want to use the term assisted living, but I like the thought process of that very much. I'm not familiar enough with the mixed use zoning as to how we would recommend that, but I like that idea.
That fits into
Yeah.
any residential zoning, elder care.
Okay,
we-
so I mean,
yeah, it'd be a
I mean,
conditionally
I don't
permitted
know,
use
I mean,
within a
how do you guys
residential
feel?
zoning
I like
district.
the thought of having something like that included, where I'd almost like to say, could we start asking our developers when they come in for a plan to maybe start including that on a more regular basis, if it makes sense to the
If it makes-
overall property, because there is a lack of that in Penfield for sure. How does the rest of the board feel about that? Is that something we would make as a recommendation? As far as when a developer comes in with let's say a new recommendation for a piece of property, whether it's backfill or net new or something like that, that they consider including at least some of that in their proposals.
What specifically, George?
The elder care.
Yeah, to put it in perspective really quick, what we'd call hospitals or proprietary healthcare facilities, something like a greenhouse assisted living, which is sort of like what the St. John's program does, or a more traditional assisted living, or even sort of assisted living group home type situations, are conditionally permitted uses existing within the residential zoning district, so they are already possible. In this
Atria.
case, it's
Atrium
whether,
would be one.
balancing density to allow for something, because this would be considered a more intense use and does eat up some of the density, usually looking at the number of beds in terms of number of units, does eat up some of that residential. And most of our other ones where they've done something similar, like Arbor Ridge was an incentive zoning program, which is sort of a special program done by the town board to allow higher density uses. Whether we would want to look at something like, recommending that he comes back in for an incentive zoning type program, or if there's a way we could zone in more density, or look at saying, well, if we do go down to half acre, it does create more units. He can use some of those units to, put towards a proprietary healthcare facility or a assisted facility, living facility. So there are some options there. It would be mostly how comfortable the committee is with allowing some of that higher density for something like that type of use, or recommending a higher density than half acre if a assisted living or a nursing facility was part of the proposal. Because we've done similar things like that where there is conditional zoning. Something is rezoned to a certain type of use or a certain type of district on the condition that XYZ happens. So some of our business non-retail are conditioned on doing a rear access drive. One of our limited business districts was rezoned on the condition that they couldn't do a certain type of business use that was considered detrimental where that was rezoned. So it could be something where you look at half acre, you could look at half acre or less density if they're willing to do something that could be considered a benefit to the community, like a healthcare facility. It's really up to you guys.
I think I would ask my second question to the one person in the room that could probably tell us how viable, how willing would developers be to a conversation like that? In other words, if you were to ask them to please consider this as part of your proposal, what kind of pushback are we going to get?
I really can't speak for the other developers. I guess if you were a big developer, we have some big ones in the community, they're not interested in a piece like this. It's way too much work. They're not interested in carving out 2 acres and doing a senior living facility. They're building 200 or 300 apartments, or they're buying 100 acres, they're clear cutting it and putting in, 400 apartments. And there's money in that, and they're big people and they're big businesses. So they're not gonna fool around with this. I think the smaller the developers, they would consider it. Sometimes it wouldn't fit. I've had projects where it wouldn't make sense to do that, but when I laid this out and I walked the woods, I don't know, it just popped into my head. I think it's ideal. I don't think you'd get pushback if it made sense to the developer.
So Rudy, would you
some-
be looking to build that facility yourself, or would you be looking to partner with somebody like URMC or
I would
Rochester
partner with
Regional?
somebody, I want to build it and own it, but I don't know anything about that. I would hire Visiting Angels, or I don't really know yet, but I would hire the right professional company to say, I'm going to build it, you can rent it, or I don't really even know all the details, and then let them manage it. And depending on how fast the years tick by, I might end up there, who knows?
So, I mean,
Yeah, I would like to own it because I want to control it. I want to build it the way I want. I want to preserve the woods the way I want. I want to be in full control of that. I want to build a beautiful building and then give it to somebody to manage until maybe I
And
need
have
it. I
them
don't
hold the
know.
corner room for you.
I've already got my corner room drawn in.
So, I mean, I would like to, as a group, talk more detail about this. I mean, unless you guys disagree, I think there's some value in that. And not just because I'm 60 this Friday, only because I think that in the community, we have a lot of people. I've talked to a couple folks that have sold their home that were older and moved someplace else because there wasn't an option in Penfield for them, right? Or as somebody gets to the point they need a little bit more care or a little bit more, have a little bit less ability, so.
They're leaving town.
Yeah.
So, George, I guess I would not be in favor of saying we should be trying to push developers to do this. I mean, if they want to do this, I think that's great. I think maybe we could try to encourage them to do it, and
Oh, yeah, if I came across it any other way other than encouragement, that's the term I meant to use, was to encourage them that, and maybe offer some incentives for those that are willing to do it.
But I think the other thing to consider, to Rudy's point, is not every property is well suited to this for a variety of different reasons. And I'm pretty familiar with the green home concept. I mean, it is like an assisted living type thing, but it's in a communal setting as opposed to people in their individual little spaces.
Well, that's a good point. And the other part of that, too, is because you go to assisted or whatever level of care, it's now regulated by the state of New York, too. So, I mean, they make a decision as to, is there a need for it? Are there too many? Are there not a few? So you may run into a situation where they say, this developer, we do need one here, but we don't need one over here. It just depends on what their criterion is for establishing these homes. So you're right. I think that if you did it as an incentive, and there was, they had done some background research to say, yes, the state would support something like that here, sure, go ahead and move forward on it. But you don't always know if they're going to do that or not.
And this is new to me too, so I would be working with whatever the recommendation comes out from the board. If it is yes, I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to work with the staff that knows more, get people that are involved and find out what needs to be done. But I just think, and it's such a nice mix. Let's say I am there in a nice townhouse and my mom or dad, now they've passed away, but some haven't. And I'd like my mom, she wants to be there next to me, and feasibly half the families in this townhome project could have mom and dad or aunt and uncle right there. I think it's perfect. That's just my dream, so hopefully I brought it across in a fair way.
Thoughts? Don't everybody jump at one time.
Thoughts on the whole concept and the rezoning for
Right.
of this parcel? Okay. We just didn't know what you wanted our thoughts
Oh,
on.
I'm
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were
It's okay.
focusing
sorry.
particularly on the.
I always want your
on
thoughts.
the
It doesn't have
elder.
to be on this.
Yeah, were you talking about the elder care or the entire package as a
Well,
as a
let's
whole?
talk about, I think, let's
start
talk
with
about the feasibility of rezoning it from
Yeah,
R1 to
let's start
half
with
acre, and what kind of an impact that may have. And then the idea of his concept, you can certainly make a recommendation to the board one way or the other on that as well.
Is it half acre, Jim, excuse me, or 120, Doug? I think
Well,
it's
that is
all-
half acre.
I think
It's-
it's
Yeah,
0.46
our
of an
120 is,
So it's
well,
just-
we call it half acre.
It's 0.46 of an acre.
0.46,
Got it.
0.47.
Thank you for that clarification.
And
But
you're saying the gray around there is currently, that's what it's zoned?
That's currently what it's zoned, yep.
So that would butt up right against, that's?
Yep. And
okay.
at one point, this whole area was half acre, so 933 used to be 2 lots. And most of these lots down here are all in that sort of half, 3/4 of an acre, because they were, when those homes were built, that area was zoned half acre. Prior to 1981. In 1981, we did a major zoning overhaul, and our residential AA or residential A all changed to higher densities, especially the further east you got. So in this case, this area was zoned RR1, and I even believe a lot of those homes along Shoecraft and Plank were zoned RR1, and it was
That was a recommendation of a previous comprehensive plan committee to do that.
to bring them back into
Compliance.
with,
Because they were all considered to be pre-existing non-conforming lots, so they had to come in for variances for whatever
There's
they
no
did.
sewers back then, right, when the thinking to make it
Right.
bigger?
Well, the problem was, those were built before sewers were in place, and what was happening all over town was everybody's backyard became a gigantic leach field that was failing. So they came across the idea of coming to spread people out with 1 and 2 acre zones. So that worked out pretty well. Now there are sanitary sewers. I'm just want to ask you, there are 24 lots along both roads there, and you're looking at 24 units. I assume you're looking at 12 buildings, or I shouldn't say that. There's probably less than that.
Well, it's going to be, yeah, if you
4
look at
units?
this, if you look at the little pencil sketch there, I've sketched out the townhouse units based on if the zoning goes through and you make it equal to what's around it, then there would be 12 buildings and 24 units.
Right.
If you made a residential subdivision, let's say the board says, yes, it makes sense to make it equal to the rest of the neighbors, and it would still be about 24 homes.
So you're looking at duplex units type
I want to
design?
do what I did at Barclay. It was so successful, people love it. The design was great.
So you have 4 units in each building there, don't you?
Nope, 2.
2?
those are
Oh.
Yeah, in fact, interestingly, Mr. Barbados is very successful in everything he does. They're bigger than we are, and most of his projects have been 4.
4, that's right.
The problem
And they
with
are
4 that
Penfield,
I
too.
didn't like, they're cheaper, but the 2 center units, you have a window in the back and a window and a door in the front. No windows on the side.
Everybody wants an end
And
unit.
guess who? Yeah, nobody wants the center unit. So you sell those cheaper. But interestingly, and I haven't talked to Jim yet, the new project in the Webster, duplexes.
Yeah.
Everybody has an end unit. Now, they're more expensive, but they're just brighter, they're happier. So there would be, and again, BME, once the board makes a decision, would go. But if the 14 acres is used and you have the zoning is half, that's 28 units. By the time you take out the pond and the woods, somewhere between 24 and 25, either residential houses or townhome units. So I think the units wouldn't change. And that's what fits, even if you said, boy, could we squeeze more in? I don't think comfortably. That's about the limit to make it nice. If we don't do the little senior living thing, you could get in maybe 4 more units. Comfortably, that would fit nicely. But I'd much prefer to have that than 4 more.
If it were rezoned.
If it was
Yeah,
rezoned.
if it weren't, you'd have your 12 units, and that would be
Then
it.
you'd have 12 units and that's it, or I'd still like to do that, but then I would probably wait. It has to make financial sense, too.
Okay. So with respect to the request for rezoning, what is the committee's thought process on that?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
I'm good with it.
Chuck,
Oh, yeah, I'm okay with that.
you okay? All right, so what about the concept he's proposing for the townhouse and the green home with it?
I like it.
I like the idea.
I
Yeah.
love the idea, yeah.
Yeah.
And to piggyback on that, you would make a recommendation, from what I understand, you would make a recommendation to the town board that you would encourage developers to have an incentive if they were to supposedly make this part of their,
For the lots where it made sense
right.
and where it, where it
Where-
would be, it would, yes, exactly.
It complements the neighborhood.
I want to make it, as, how did you word it, Don? We're going to make it a recommendation that they consider adding this to there versus, you don't want to strong arm somebody, you want to say, would you be willing
Right,
to, and is this,
right.
yeah.
Because they may want to or they may not want to, but it may not fit in that particular location.
Yeah, and that was a good point you made, that it could be that even if they wanted to, it's not conducive because of the layout of the land or the parcel, so.
Or the nature of the community,
Right.
even,
Or the nature of the.
you know, nature of that particular community.
No, this is recorded though, and we do post, yep, these are recorded and we do post them on.
We record everything.
Well, I'm just thinking, there's another piece that's there that, may have some opportunities. I won't discuss it if we're live, but Mr. Costello, we spoke about, some of the neighbors there, that there may be opportunities to make some improvements too, but I guess we could talk about that another time.
Very good.
So Rudy, I have a funny question for you.
No questions are funny.
So, well, you're telling me that if you build a fourplex, nobody wants to buy the interior units. Why aren't fourplexes built as a square so that everybody has two sides?
Over on State
Some of them
Road,
are,
my good
yeah.
friend, Mr. Wegmans, built exactly what you're saying. It's just kind of a square where you have two garages, and there was some positivity to it.
Built some for.
And I looked at those and I said, boy, that's when I had that project that we proposed for the 250 area. But there was also a lot of negativity as far as garages and car parking. So I'm not really an expert on that, but, quick survey of folks that live there, you'd get the positives and the negatives of it. So it's possible. Building 4 units is cheaper than building 2.
It might take up less area, too.
It takes up a little less area. I mean, with an 8-foot, it's not a lot, but it is cheaper to do it, so you could offer a little cheaper unit, but I don't want to live in that center unit, so I don't want to build one. I want to live on the end unit. That's the one I would pick, and that's the one I think everybody wants to pick. So I'm not even going to give them the little tight thing in the middle.
I do agree. I know a couple people over there that are very happy there. They love it. It is awkward getting into the garage areas and getting to the garage areas, because you do have to put down more pavement to accommodate
That's-
4 units versus.
That's what I've heard there too.
But it is nice.
Gives you a nice
I
little
haven't heard anybody-
patio, so the concept is good. In fact, I had sketched that concept for the 250 project, just it never happened. So this one, the woods is pretty, the entrance is pretty, it'll be secluded. I really think it'll be it even has a name already. And now my memory isn't, it's called Wellsbrook. Wellsbrook. My sweetheart comes up with all the names, so I said, I need a name. This feels woods, but I want it to be understated, something nice. I need a nice name.
I was going to go with Spinella Landing.
So she came up with Wellsbrook. So it's not cast in stone, but I really like the sound of it, Wellsbrook. So Wellsbrook.
We don't have one of those yet, so that's a good thing.
No, you don't have a
Everything's been
Wellsbrook.
green, everything's valley, everything's pine, so it's nice to have something different.
I also have a wonderful little development in Webster, and I wish I hadn't named it already because I would use the name here. It's called Sienna Reserve, and I love that name too, but that's already used up in Webster, so I like Wellsbrook very much. So this would be Wellsbrook Townhome Community. And then it would also be, I don't know, do you want to live in the same community of Wellsbrook and have the little senior living facility be Wellsbrook? I don't know. I guess I got to think about that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
You could give it a sub-name like Wellsbrook Acres or.
Wellsbrook something.
Yeah.
Names are important. I mean, street
Names
names
are
are
very
important and
important.
subdivision names are important. I want them to sound nice.
Very good. Any other questions of Rudy? Thank you very much for
Oh,
coming
my
in tonight.
pleasure.
It was very
Yes, thank you,
enlightening.
Rudy.
We
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it. And you heard the committee's recommendation that will be forwarded to the town board.
Very good.
So as we move forward and finalize the process, the town board will then take the document, review it. They'll take the recommendations and the committee's made several recommendations. I give them a lot of credit. We've seen a lot of properties. The board will then take those recommendations and start to determine how feasible it is for them to move forward with those recommendations and then start the rezoning processes for the properties. that they see
I know
fit.
you guys don't need my expertise. but I am always available if you're walking properties, doesn't have to be mine, it's independent, but if you just want a developer's eyeballs or I do from tree cutting to developing to landscaping, that's my little world. So if you ever want me to accompany you on one of these walks, I'm happy to volunteer. I have 2 things I'm committed to twice a week, and other than that, I'm available. I'm always working here, so I'd be happy to walk properties that you would, if you need my input, happy to do it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rudy.
Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great
Appreciate
night.
it. Thanks for all
Thank
your
you-
work.
thank you for
I know you guys
coming.
put a lot of time into this.
So it's going on 10 to 8. I don't think we're going to get into much more activity tonight. I think we wore you out a little bit.
Yes.
I know Doug has been working on the comments from our last meeting for the various components,
And I have
sections.
more to continue working on now, so
So
I'll
we'll keep plugging away on that.
plugging away.
and get that done. Our next meeting is on the 24th.
Yeah, does that work for everyone? Because the 24th and the 31st were both free. They're both Tuesdays. We chose the 24th because it would distance us a little bit more from a meeting, any meetings in September. But if the 24th doesn't work, and I know at least one person has already said that it doesn't work for them.
It doesn't work
people
for
now
me, but that's-
said it doesn't work
that's here
for
and
them.
there.
So I wanted to make sure if it is a date that doesn't work, we can look at the 31st, and I can send that out as an email to you guys again. And
Is it absolutely necessary to meet again in August?
Well, we'd like
Yeah.
to move this along.
Yeah,
We've
we're gonna
dragged it
try to
out on you
keep-
now for 2 years and a little
we're
bit
going to
more
try to
than 2
keep
years.
getting
We-
sections completed
I mean,
and
it is
giving you
summertime.
guys
That's-
those
that's
sections
just-
to review.
I'm not sure I'm going to be here.
Unless we can get materials out to you and let you comment on those materials and get them back to us, but I don't think we have any more properties to review.
No
I think we're
properties
done
to
with
review.
that.
It would just be the remaining sections in sort of the second half of the document. The first half of the document, we gave you guys a 50% draft back at the end of 2019 to review over December, early January. We didn't get a chance to really go through too much of that after that, but the first 50% was pretty well settled. The last half of the document's really where we got into the weeds of the nitty-gritty of recommendations and implementation items, and we've been trying to work through those. So any future meeting we'd have would be to go over those sections with you guys, get your feedback if you guys are comfortable with sort of the recommendations that were written into the document or the recommendations that we got from you guys and tried to incorporate. We could just email those out to you guys and let you review them on your own, forward any comments you have, then we could do less frequent meetings just to discuss whether it's multiple sections after you guys have had a period to comment and we can send out revisions, having like a monthly meeting or something like that to just go through, finalize those sections, get them incorporated into the document, and then get a final draft out for your review.
So can I make maybe a compromise suggestion?
Yeah, I was thinking of a compromise, too.
Yeah, so for the summer, I think through August and maybe through September, maybe once a month, we have one meeting in September, and with the materials, with the expectation, come October, maybe we would throw some additional ones if we needed to have some face-to-face discussions, to have interactive, discussions over particular points. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm just trying to keep in mind what you're saying, it's summer.
I
but
mean,
also-
yeah, and then in the autumn, just see as needed, just if there's extra meetings
So if we
required.
can get data or get written comments to you or updated materials to you for your comments to get back to us, and then we can put that together for you and come up with a final draft, so to speak, and then maybe sit down and go through, after you've had a chance to read it, go through it one last time, maybe in September or October,
Right.
and just make sure that we're right where you want us to be for your final document to the town board.
I think another approach would just be to send out the documents as, which I like to see them in advance anyway.
Yep.
Give us a date by which you want the feedback, and we have a meeting scheduled. If people can come to the meeting, they come. If they can't, we have their comments, and we can discuss their comments
Incorporate them.
as well as our own. I mean, I find the meetings valuable because Jim can weigh in on a lot of stuff. The the going back and forth with people's questions, I think, is informative. If we didn't have this discussion live tonight with some of the stuff, like Chuck said, some of Roland's questions,
Right.
some of the things we were able to ask Rudy in person, I think this would have been a much weaker discussion and led to a much sort of weaker contribution to the comp plan. So I would like to see the meeting still go on, but I appreciate, I just got a call for grand jury duty for 4 weeks.
really?
Yeah, it's a 4-week commitment starting this Monday. So talk about your summer just
Every day?
every day.
Yeah, I had to go through that too.
You
It
know,
ended up
so-
being 6
So could
weeks.
we
Talk
put-
about your summer getting zapped. So
Yeah.
I,
Could we push maybe so what would be the time commitment where you think you would have a document for us to review? Let's let Doug tell us, okay, this is when I think I could have something to you guys.
I'm hopeful. We've got, I think, 3 sections left in addition to the ones that we had already started. I am hopeful that by mid-September I could have something out to you guys on those sections. A lot of it's varied based on how busy we get with other applications and materials. 2021 has been a very busy year. A lot of the applications that did not come in 2020 came in 2021. So I'll do my best to get things out to you guys as quickly as possible. Admittedly, I've not had much of a chance the past 2 weeks to look at much. We've been dealing with a couple of planning concerns in our department. So my goal would be by end of September, probably at the latest, to get you guys something. Whether it's a draft of the second half for you guys to be able to review or comment on, or we could even do something like toss it into Google Docs where you guys could just write comments and do sort of live edits and give you the opportunity to see what other committee members are saying and then bring those out at the meeting and discuss them, flesh them out a little bit more.
Just seems a little, I'm gonna put my Jim hat on here for a minute. That seems a little long. I guess I'd kind of like to say, could we be a little more aggressive and possibly a little more optimistic and say by mid-September, when you're done with your 4-week commitment after that, and that would keep you from having any more meetings in the summer, we could shoot for maybe mid-September?
Okay, we could shoot for mid-September.
Yeah.
except I'm going to be hopefully leaving for a week immediately after this jury duty is
You are
over.
throwing lots of wrenches in the works today, Miss Donna.
No, well, no, when I'm on jury duty, I can still be here at 6 o'clock, but I can't,
What week would you be leaving?
We'll have to get your schedule, and we'll have to
Yeah,
look at
yeah,
yours and
yeah.
see where everybody else
And
is
see
and
what Jim's
try and
is and
build it
everybody
in
else,
for
yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
we really do want to have, I mean, you four have really been the mainstays for us, and we really appreciate it. We don't want to lose your ability to participate, so we'll just take a look at where you are and what your schedule is like, and then we'll work towards getting something where you're all back together again. And I think we'll try and work and get some stuff out to you before then, obviously.
Have you guys reached out to the members that haven't been coming to see?
Well, Harold's been coming, he's been religious about it, this is the one night he hasn't been here, the rest,
I'm just asking because there's a
Yeah.
lot of envelope with
Yeah.
name
Yeah,
tags.
well,
over
we know
there.
we
that,
do
and,
we do reach out, and you guys are all on our emails. We do hear from a lot of the other members. I knew a couple of them weren't going to be able to make it tonight.
Right.
We have been trying to keep the Tuesdays when possible, since that was the original date everybody said was most available to them. Try to get you guys dates as early as possible to make sure that they are free, and try to work around as many schedules as possible, knowing that it might not be possible for us to get everybody at
I
the
don't know,
same meeting date.
Based on the participation, it looks like while Tuesdays may have historically been the best day, they don't
And that's
appear
why
to
we've
have been
done
the
a few
best day.
Thursdays and Wednesdays, and we try to get other days out there for you guys just to find a date that works for the most number of people in the committee.
So do we think we're going to get any involvement from those resources, or are we yet?
we don't know. Harold, as I say, Harold's been very good about it, some of them have not been here for some time.
There are a few we have not heard from recently, and I've been trying to reach out to them to see if we can reconnect.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it would be nice to have some additional sets of eyes on the document and input, but, if it's us four, it's us four, right?
We have to
We'll get it
laugh
done.
because we talk
let's say
about.
5 because of Harold.
Yes,
Us
absolutely, but we
5.
talk about community involvement as part of the
Yeah.
process. And this is my fifth time of doing this with various committees for the comprehensive plan update. And we have had committees where we started out with 20 people or 21 people, and we come up with 4 or 5 that stick it out with us. And we're very thankful that you do it. I mean, it's a big commitment, we know it. But we also know at the very beginning, we're going to end up with 4 or 5 people because they just
So you
never-
basically have already set in your mind, you're going to whittle it down, okay, well.
We don't whittle it, I mean, it's just a fact of life that people have other things that keep them busy, and it's hard to get everybody together on a sustained basis. And admittedly, COVID didn't help either. It kind of took the wind out of everybody's sails, so that's tough.
And during that
that's-
year, a lot of things in my wife and my life have changed. And that's what I'm like.
Yeah, yeah, we understand it. It's just human nature. It has to happen, so, but we do appreciate your efforts in sticking in. I think it's a good cross-section, and I think you've been a phenomenal contributors to this process. I really do. I appreciate everything you've done.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, everybody go home and enjoy your families.